All right. So we'll try Be'ezrat Hashem as always to start with something interesting that I found. It says Lo tavaru ish b'chol moshevotechem. You shouldn't kindle fire wherever you dwell. Zohar HaKadosh says it's talking about getting angry, fire of anger, right? And it says the toref nafsho ba'apo. The person that gets angry, af is anger. Toref nafsho, he tears his nefesh, tears as if his soul in his anger. And so we know that even during the week it's asur. It's a grave sin to get angry, but more so on Shabbat. On Shabbat it says in Tikkunei HaZohar, one who gets angry, he is igniting the fire in Gehinnom, the fire in Gehinnom, and it causes the people that are in Gehinnom, right, people that are in hell, that they should not be able to rest even on Shabbat, right? Not that there is actual fire there, right? We're talking about the suffering that goes on, so he causes that suffering. And more so, the person has a guest on Shabbat. That's our extra neshama that comes to us. And when you get angry, you get upset, you get depressed, right? Which is asur both on weekday and more so on Shabbat. These things are not good, especially on Shabbat. Shabbat is Yom Menucha, it's a day of joy and happiness. The person must be extra careful to be happy, right? At the time that he accepts Shabbat, he or she accepts Shabbat, and then to remove everything, right, from one's heart, and you should just be happy with the fact that Shabbat is coming to be with us, right? And imagine if a very important guest would be coming to your house, and you sit there with the face of Tisha B'Av, the face of mourning, how would the guest feel? We have to understand, it's a great honor to have to welcome Shabbat, and Chas v'Shalom, want to push Shabbat away from you by being angry or being depressed. And obviously, because it's such an important day, because there is so much Kedusha on Shabbat, the Satan tries more so on Shabbat to get on our nerves and upset us.
What if you get upset at your kids?
That's what we're talking about.
That's the same thing.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. It's a test. It's a very hard test, but may Hashem help us all to be able to overcome it. You could get fake angry. That's always the case. If you're angry face, you're angry fake. Obviously, but inside you have to know it's asur. It's definitely asur. That's even during the week. If you're angry, then just don't talk, don't do anything. Even during the week, for sure. It's something that a person has to work on. We all do. All right. We'll go to the Melacha of Tofer. What is the Melacha of Tofer? It's the act of sewing. All right? That's one of the third Melachot, the Melacha of Tofer. Right? Now, in this Melacha, what does it entail? Taking two soft surfaces, right, and attaching them one to another by using a third element, right, through which they become one. Once you connect them, this is the gist of the Melacha of Tofer. Right? So the example is taking two pieces of clothing and you sew them together by using a thread. That is Tofer. So there is no Tofer without a thread, right? You just can't attach two things together and say, oh, this is it. I did Tofer. This is sewing. No, you need a third element, which is the string through which you make you attach them. Or you take two pieces of paper, right, or soft leather, and you glue them together. That would also be considered Tofer. Okay, using glue, that would be your third element. Taking that third element, attaching these two together, that would be considered Tofer. However, if you take two hard surfaces, like a thick piece of leather or pieces of wood, and you connect them together using a nail or a screw, right? Or glue, whatnot. Or you take two pieces of metal and you solder them together, right? Or any other means of connecting these metals together. This is not considered tofer. Right? Shalom. This is not considered tofer. This is not considered like you're sewing. This is considered boneh, right? You're building, right? One of the definitions of building is when you attach, when you assemble two hard surfaces together, like you take parts of a chair and you assemble them together. That's boneh. But this is not. It wouldn't be considered sewing. All right. So now that we got that out of the way. Or let's say you are connecting two things without using a third element. How is that? You take a piece of cloth and you take a string and you make a design on it. Okay? That's not tofer. That's not the melacha of tofer. You just beautified it. That's not tofer. Even though you are attaching a string to a cloth, right? But there is no third element that's attaching these two together. It's just a string and a piece of cloth. That is not saying that it's mutar, but the melacha of tofer, it's not. It could be ketiva, it could be writing, it could be whatever ways of writing, but it is not tofer. This is not sewing. Ketiva. If you draw like if you do embroidery like a flower, that would be ketiva. But if it's just you just push it through, you make a line, that would be makepe batish. It would be you're completing something, you're beautifying something. That's a different prohibition, but it's not tofer. Based on this, like a zipper or a button, right? How are we allowed to use a zipper or a button? You're taking two cloths, right, and you are attaching them together by closing the button. Isn't that sewing? It's a third element, and it's connecting two pieces of cloth.
It's not permanent.
Thank you. Right? It's not chipur. You don't make them into one thing. There is something in between that's connecting them. It's not a connection. Tofer, using a string, like you're connecting it, and it's permanent. It's there to stay, right? It makes it one. But this third element, being the zipper, being the button or whatnot, it's an outside connection, and you could very easily separate them. And in fact, that's what it's for, right? That's the reason why you use these elements rather than using a string to connect these two surfaces, and therefore it is completely allowed as far as Shabbat is concerned. Now, let's recap. In order for tofer, for the melacha of tofer to take place, you need three conditions. One, you are connecting two soft surfaces together. That's one. Number two, it is done through a third element, right? i.e. a string, right? Using needle and string. Number three, that it should be in a way that it's going to become one piece, right? And it's like basically a permanent, like it becomes one thing, right? So that would be the description of the melacha of tofer. Now, when is the isur of tofer? That is, like it says in the Mishnah, when a person does shete tefirot. Shete tefirot means two sewings. How does that take place? You have two pieces of cloth, right? When you take a needle and a string, when you stick it in there, that's nothing. You haven't done anything at all, right? When you stick it in the cloth and you bring it in, one thing is nothing. When you bring it out, that's one. You're completing one round, still nothing. When you stick it back in, that's considered shetei tefirot, right? So the first one was nothing. Once you did the second, when you brought it back out, that perfected one, and then when you stick it back in, that perfected the second round. So shetei tefirot, right? Two sewings, right? That would be asur condition if you tie both ends in this case. If you tie both ends that they won't come out, then a person does that, it is, he has been over, he has transgressed the melacha of sewing. However, if he doesn't tie both ends, then the Isur is not from the Torah, the Isur is only rabbinic. Right? It makes a difference. Right? And now, and if he does it 3 times, he put it in there 1 time, brought it out, and then he inserted the needle 1 more time, and then did it 1 more time, brought the needle out, then in that case, even if he doesn't tie the ends, it is asur. Why? Because at this point already it's tighter and it becomes one piece, and then it would be isur of tofer min haTorah, even if you don't tie both ends. Is that clear? Is that good? So okay. Now, a person, therefore, based on what we've mentioned before, is allowed to use a needle, a pin, or even a safety pin to, let's say like, one of the kids' clothing, like, got a tear, and it wants to, and they want to mend it. They want to, like, hold it together. You take a safety pin and you, like, you stick it in there, like, and you close it off. Or you don't have a safety pin, you want to use a pin or a needle, whatever it is you want to put in there to, like, hold the pieces together, like, and even if you put it in there a few times, like, just go, like, 2 or 3 times, this is not tefirah, this is not sewing, right? Sewing is only if you use a third element, which is the ma'aseh of sewing. The act of sewing only takes place using a string, a needle, using just a needle alone to hold them together. It is not considered sewing. Yes?
It doesn't rip the fabric. I'm always careful.
With the needle?
Yeah. Like, isn't that
Will it rip it? No.
like small? I mean,
Unless you mean if it's all the way at the edge of the fabric, right? And then when it pulls, it might fall apart.
oh no, like I'm saying, like the little strings I see, like you poke it and it rips, like a little. I don't know.
Oh, that's not a rip. That's just a hole in the cloth.
Okay.
Be'ezrat Hashem, hopefully next week we're gonna get to ripping. I hope. But in the meantime, let's stick to sewing. And this is not, and that is sticking the needle in there. They're just making a hole in the thing. That's not a problem. Now I see what you. No, that's not an issue. Now, how about this? Some winter coats. Now it's winter. They have linings, like So sometimes it's, especially in the East Coast, a lot of times it's warm. You can't, like, and the lining is very hot. You don't want to have that. So they come with either a button or a zipper that you could remove that. You could remove the lining out of there, right? Or a lot of coats that have hoods that you could be put on through a button or a zipper. Can one put these on or off the coat, right? The answer is, of course. The way we explained before, using a zipper or a button for these things is not considered sewing, that you're sewing these things on. Even if your intention is to keep it on the coat for a long time, right? Because it's not derech hatefirah. This is not the way you sew, right? The way you sew, you take a needle, take a string, and you sew them together. Using a zipper or a button, these things aren't that's not considered sewing. And you could easily, the idea is that you could easily take off the lining and put it back on, and so on and so forth. It is not considered sewing. Now, sometimes, like in a shirt, like in a jacket, there is a string that got loose, and it's like coming apart. The part that they're sewn together, 2 pieces of cloth, they're sewn together, it's like gets loose. So you pull that string, it becomes tight. It becomes one piece. Are you allowed to do that on Shabbat? Definitely not. This is an actual act of sewing, because by you tightening it, you're bringing these 2 cloths together, and that's asur, right? Also, sometimes if you see like a button on a coat, on a jacket, or a shirt, is like getting loose. So you see that there's a string there, and if you pull it, that's going to tighten the button onto the shirt or a coat. That is also asur to do. Like, a person says, but no, the button is going to get lost. Sorry, it's all right. It's all right. Sometimes they want to wrap the string around it. That's also a problem. Like, that also becomes like, you're attaching this button onto this jacket using the string. That's a problem.
But you're not knotting it.
That would be kosher.
I mean, you're not.
You're tightening it. It becomes tight. But you're wrapping it, where you're pulling that string. You're basically connecting that connection between the two works, and it becomes into one piece. That's the idea. Now, let's see. Someone has one of these cloth flower like stuff, that they for design on a hat or on a jacket or on a dress, and it fell off on Shabbat. Is one allowed to use a safety pin and to attach it back onto the dress on Shabbat? Why is that?
It's not permanent and stuff.
It's not permanent. You're not using a needle and a thread. Therefore, you're allowed to do it, but that's only if it was there already, even before Shabbat. Doesn't matter. It was there already and it fell off. Now you want to put it on there. But if it was never there and now you want to do it, that's something new. That's metaken keli. You are making a new keli. That is not allowed. So the difference is if it was there already and you're putting it back on, or was it there from before?
Are you allowed to put those pins, like the special pins?
Safety pins?
No, that
A brooch.
brooch.
How?
Like, let's say flower. You have to, it's like a needle. You have to put it in your...
Right. So that depends. If it was there already,
No,
never there,
no.
if it was never there, you can't put it on. But if it was there sometime before, you're just putting it back on, then you could do it.
But Rabbi, it doesn't belong to the article of clothing. It's like
Yeah.
just like a decoration or like just like something to make it nice. So therefore,
That's it.
the clothing is already like you're not perfecting it. It's just
Yes,
like,
you are, for
Why?
sure. You're kidding me? You're giving it a new design.
Make it sparkly.
But there's nothing wrong with the garment. It's already perfect.
Now you're making it even more perfect.
But you're not
Why else are you
attaching
doing
other
What?
medium.
You're right. It's not Tofer. I'm sorry. Let's go back. This is not Tofer. It's definitely not Tofer. We said Tofer is only when you use a string and a needle and you sew it onto that. Here, all you're using is a pin. Like, I know there's a special pin that you use and you put on. That's all. But it becomes makebe patish. It becomes perfecting something. That was fine. Would you have worn it? Of course you would have. Now, why are we putting it on? To make it look nicer. Therefore, it is a problem.
How about using not safety pins, the pins that don't have, what's it called? They're like the flat needle ends that you could just stick it in and it can easily just fall off.
That's called a pin.
A pin, yeah.
That's same thing.
You can't do that?
The safety pin is a hidur. The safety pin, when we say that you could even use a safety pin, that's like a bigger thing. Those are for sure you could use also. Same thing, same idea.
So you could use that to perfect.
No, in that case, no. I told you. That's when we're talking about, what is that thing called?
A brooch.
A brooch. That's not a problem of tofer here, because you're not sewing. You're attaching, you're beautifying this thing, and if it's for the first time that a person is putting it on there, if it was there before, and you want to put it back on, then fine, because you're not making a change, something new into the. But here you're adding something. You're adding something. Not as far as tofer. Again, you're not sewing, but it's called makebe patish. You're perfecting it. You're adding something to it to make it to beautify it. Still doesn't make sense?
No, I just am
And for
confused.
tickles,
Like let's say, when I wear my scarves, I pin them in, like with those pins. So
Oh,
I can't
really?
use that.
You're saying a bobby pin?
No, I use like
Straight
the
pins.
the straight pins.
Oh.
Like I'll add like an embellishment with a straight pin.
Ah. Based on what we said, it seems like it's a problem.
That's a problem.
Right? Not tofer, but it's a problem of, you're like making a new garment.
What if you normally wear it that way?
If you normally wear it that way, and you've had it on there before, and you just, again, putting it back on, no problem. Let's say in your case, you could do it during the week. You put it on there, like, for even minutes, for like, for whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then on Shabbat, let's say you decide, you know what, yeah, I did that on Wednesday, I had this on, then you put that back on, that's fine, that would be fine. Because you're not doing something new.
What if you only do it once in a while?
That's fine. As long as it was done, it was on there, you're okay, it seems. It seems from them, that's, from what they're saying, that's okay. Okay? Now, we're done a little bit with sewing, but there is a toledah. Let's hear what the Rambam says in the 10th chapter of the Laws of Shabbat. He says, Hamidabek neyarot, one who glues papers, or orot, or pieces of leather on Shabbat, bekolan shel sefarim, that's a special glue that they used to have, shel sofrim, that scribes, they used to use it to glue things together. He says, Harezet toledat melechet tofer. This becomes the toledah. That means it's going to be a part of the Av Melacha. The father is Tofer. Now, the father usually has children. One of the children is this gluing. So gluing, making these two elements into one piece, that also becomes a part of Tofer. And he says that in this case, he's Chayav. That means it's absolutely asur from the Torah. And the Rambam writes as well, V'chen, also, Hamefarek, one who separates papers that are glued, or pieces of leather that are glued together on Shabbat, and his intention is not to ruin him, to just rip him apart. He just, carefully takes them apart. That's also a Tordah of Melacha of Korea, right? The opposite of Tofer, sewing, is Korea. Korea is tearing, right? And that is, he says, it would be Chayav. If his intention is to just rip it up, destroying it, then it's not asur from the Torah. But if his intention is to separate them, right, gently, that would be the opposite of tofer, sewing them, then he writes that it would be asur. So what do we learn from this? The person says, let's give the kids a project to do. Here, kids, here's Elmer's glue and paper, put all these, glue these papers onto this nice thing, some projects for you to do on long summer days. Asur. Right? You can't do that. You can't glue things together. This is the melacha of sewing.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Because you were talking about like projects and toys and stuff. So I know we talked about this briefly, but did you say Legos? If you build Legos like with your kid, is that okay or not okay to do on Shabbat?
We said for small children, if they want to do it, they could play with it, no problem.
No, if they want you to like play along with them.
It's not such a good thing. It's you wanna let them play amongst themselves. That would be fine, because after all said and done, it's not a permanent building, right? It's just gonna fall apart. So it's not binyan per se. And if they're mitzta'er, if they're having a rough time with it, they really want you to help them out, then it would be allowed, for a parent to do it. But you prefer not to.
So the blocks too, like if you put big
Same
blocks.
thing. Blocks are much easier. Blocks don't get connected. That's fine.
Puzzles are.
That's also the same idea, but easier.
So
Puzzles,
more
blocks
Legos.
are certainly easier. Right? You're not
Because
really
they're
connected.
big enough to.
Right.
So it's more Legos.
Right. Lego pieces would be because it's more attached. But even that, halachically, you could do it. However, better to stay away from it. Okay. Now that we're talking about gluing and attaching things, what happens to diapers, right? Can one use diapers on Shabbat? Whoa. Years ago, it was a huge question, because back then they didn't have that little plastic thing that you take the glue and you put it on. When you put that glue on the diaper, you want to open it, it would tear it. It was an issue. And then back in the day, there was also another thing. I don't remember even. Even I don't remember that they would have. It was like a separate piece of like a tape. That tape would tape these things, the pieces, the front and the back together. That was an issue. So the poskim would say, before Shabbat, take that tape, put it on the one side that it's there already, and then on Shabbat, this way when you want to put it on, then it could be done. Forget it. I know you guys are lost because it doesn't even apply these days anymore. These days, if I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, I think most of them have Velcro, right? Velcro is not a problem, right? So the whole problem would be this glue. We're talking about gluing, right? Taking two pieces and gluing them together, that would be a problem. Even that, we're saying that it's fine because the original intention even was not lekiyum, was not there that it should stay. The whole idea is that the reason why it's made is so that you could open it and close it and use it. Like, you want to open it and check to see if everything is okay, and then close it back on, or you just want to open it to get rid of it. Then, therefore, because the whole idea of it is to be able to open it and not to stay, it becomes completely mutar. However, as you all know, when you're done with it, then you shouldn't tape it back and put it out in the garbage, because this is permanent. You do want this to be closed now, right? When you tape it back on and you throw it in the trash, you do want it closed, and that's certainly a problem. So what do? You take a plastic bag, 10 cents, and throw it in there, and throw it in the trash. This way, that'll take care of the thing for you. Okay, so, and then we said Velcro is not a problem at all. How about in this same line of thing? Let's say you're reading a book on Shabbat, and you have a post-it note or a post-it, these pointers, like it shows where you're up to. Oh yeah, what happened? They have these post-its and you want to stick it onto the book to show you where you're up to. Are you allowed to use that on Shabbat?
Yes. Yeah, because it's come on.
Because the whole idea is you don't want it there permanently. You're going to remove it, right? That's the whole idea. Otherwise, you would staple it on there. So we're talking about this thing that you take you finish reading. Let's say Friday night, you read a part of it. You leave that note there. You leave that stick-it note, or what are these things called? Pointer?
Post-it.
No, post-it is the note.
Bookmark?
It's not a bookmark. It's more like a pointer, like a little tiny plastic thing. It's a cute
They're
thing.
like different colors.
Right. Right. Anyways, whatever. Stick on pointers, whatever you want to call it. Make up your own name. But all these things, because they're not there, this is not a thing that will be glued there forever, and therefore it is allowed. Is one allowed to use magnets on Shabbat? Yes.
Yes.
Why?
It's not permanent.
Not only that, it's not, what is it? Is it an act of sewing? No, it's the power of gravity that this metal has, and it just gravitates towards metal. That's all. It's not, you're not using any trick of sewing or anything, and therefore, if you have these magnets, with the baracha of Borei Nefashot or whatnot on your fridge, you could take it off of the fridge and put it back on. Even on Shabbat, you want to put it in a different place where the kids could see it. Why not? Whatever reason, then one is allowed to do that. What about saran wrap? Right? Because saran wrap, what's special about saran wrap? Cutting it is one issue, definitely. But they have these pre-cut saran wraps. You want to put it over a pan, right? It sticks to the sides, right? It's like a glue. So based on what we just mentioned, right, it should be a problem.
But it's not glue.
Exactly. First of all, it's not glue.
Comes off.
Second of all, the idea is that you will be able to open it and take the contents in and out and use it. Therefore, it's not a problem, and a person could use it. And Velcro, we mentioned before, is not considered chibur. It's not considered a connection. It's not considered sewing, because how does Velcro work? Velcro has these little tiny plastic, tiny elements, and they're all bent at the bottom, right? So it gets stuck into the fuzz. That's all it is. It's not an act of sewing because, like, for that you need needle and a thread. You don't have that, and all it does is just get stuck, and it's meant there not for permanent use, because after a while it just gets loose and it falls off, in a good case. So really Velcro Shabbat, if anyone has a question about that, it's not a problem. Some winter coats have them, some on the pocket or on the hood or as part of the closure, or as we said, diapers, shoes, right? All these things. It's not a problem of sewing. We don't say that it's a problem of sewing. Good. Baruch Hashem. I say Baruch Hashem because we finished the Melacha of Tofer. I want to jump to the Melacha of Korea because they're really interconnected. The Melacha of Korea is really exactly the opposite of the Melacha of Tofer, right? It's the act of tearing, right? Tearing. Now, where did we have this? Meaning, to take apart one element which is soft, just like we said that was a soft element, to take it apart from another element that when they're attached to this thing. This is called korea, right? Tearing. Now, if this tearing is by way of destruction, it's not asur from Torah. That means it just takes a cloth and just tears it apart, right? This is not asur from the Torah, right? It's asur. It's still asur. Like, you can't go around tearing stuff around. But this is only if you need it. You need it to fix something. Then you're dealing with the isur of korea. Why? Because in the Mishkan, when let's say there was somehow one of the curtains, one of the coverings got a hole in them, what would you do? You wouldn't start weaving another whole curtain. What would they do? Now, imagine there's a hole like this on a cloth. How could you sew that? You can't just sew it because it's going to become wrinkled. It's going to, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
If there's a hole, like, let's say someone shoots a bullet into a curtain. Now you have a hole in the curtain. What can you do? You can't just sew that up. You have to tear it, right? Tear it open, and then you bring the edges closer, and then you can sew it up. This is korea al manat litfor. You are cutting it, you are tearing it, in order that you should sew it. So the idea here is that originally, from the beginning, when you tear this, the intention is in order to sew it back together. That's the isur of the Torah of Korea. Is that clear? Only if you do it with the intention of re-sewing it, only you do it with the intention of fixing something, then that would be the melacha of Korea. That's what we're talking about, right? Otherwise, when you're doing it just to tear it, that's kilkul, that's destruction, and that is not what we're talking about. Same idea. If you have a piece of cloth, where a person carefully opens up the places where it's sewn together, and you just open it up, right? That's asur on Shabbat. That would be the melacha of Korea, because